Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon session, Recognition in Youth Programs. This is the first of five training series that we're going to have this year for new agents. So if you all would just send me a chat or note in the chat box or something just to make sure that you can hear me, because I know you've got your video turned off and you've also got your volume turned off, but I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me before I get going too far into the session. Hi, Mary Beth. Okay, so Chelsea can hear me. Stacy, can you hear me? All right, excellent. Well, we're going to go ahead and continue to move on from there. Earlier this morning, in addition to the link, I also sent you a series of handouts. And so if you have not had an opportunity to print those, if you would go ahead and do that at this time, because you're going to need those in just a few moments. While you all are doing that, I'm going to get the PowerPoint ready to go and share the screen. So what I'm going to need you all to do, my chat box goes away at this point. So if you would tell me if you're able, let me get this started. If you're able to see the first slide that's come up, it's white slide, Recognition in Youth Programs, Helping Young People Grow. It has a black 4-H clover, or actually just a black clover on it. So if you all will turn your volumes or turn your mute buttons off for just a second, let me know that you can see that slide.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, are you just seeing the one slide, or are you seeing all of my notes and the multiple slides like I'm seeing?
I see all your notes and everything.
Hey, awesome. Okay, all right, well, let's try this. Like, oh yeah, we know how many slides. How about that one? Is that better?
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. The purpose of our in-service today is simply to create recognition, and this is a little bit different from in-services that I'm kind of accustomed to doing. This one is designed to create recognition, but also understanding. About the different levels and the different types of recognition that are appropriate for youth. Now, I have no doubt that you all are familiar with the types of recognition, the different types of recognition that each county program autonomously, everybody's different, uses to recognize their 4-H members. And they use these in different ways and at different times and at different events and different activities. But I think it's important to understand that the basis of the 4-H recognition model is comprehensive. So even though Williamson County does it different from Perry County, who does it different from Knox County, we're all trying to get at the same thing here. The 4-H recognition model is to help you to better recognize your 4-H members, but even more importantly, it's to help understand why and how the recognition system works not just in your county, but all throughout Tennessee 4-H. So I say all of this to say I hope that you're not disappointed when you leave this training this afternoon. This is, once again, not a typical in-service training for me. I very much like for my in-service participants to leave with something in hand that they can use immediately when they get back to their respective audiences. But today we are focused solely on knowledge and understanding and not so much skill. This is not going to be how every one of these training programs go. It just happens to be the way that we're going to roll with this one. And so it's my hope that by the end of today's training session that you have a much greater understanding of the 4-H recognition model. There are actually 4 areas that we're going to look at. If you would take your handout that has the black clover with the 4 circles on it and just quickly jot down these headers. This is not where we're going to start, but in a few slides we will be to this part of the program, and to keep us from having to go back and look at other slides, you can fill in the blanks now on this. I'll give you just a few seconds to do that. Once you have that completed, if you would take out your next handout, this is the fill in the blank version, and this is where we are going to start. So recognition is actually a part of the 4-H vision and mission statements. This is both on the national as well as the state level. And there's really nothing mysterious or complex about what recognition means to 4-H. Recognition is simply an acknowledgement and affirmation of the personal growth of an individual. So you can fill in the blank as we go along with these key words and statements. What's different is how this recognition occurs. That's what's going to vary each time. So in other words, the recognition is not always the big trophy presented on a stage in front of a large audience, although I would venture to guess that most of us, and myself included, visualize recognition in this way. But this is not always, and actually it's rarely the case. The recognition may be public or private. It may be a tangible award like a trophy or a ribbon or a certificate, or it may just be a simple pat on the back. It can be within the individual, such as the accomplishment of a self-set goal, or the recognition may be provided by others, such as the handing out of ribbons at a public speaking contest. Recognition in 4-H is the encouragement and support for learning. And learning is the key word, at least I think it's the key word, of what makes recognition within the 4-H program unique. It comes as a result of participation in educational experiences. And notice that I said participation in educational experiences, not winning. There's a big difference between those two. 4-H uses recognition as one strategy to help youth become more capable and competent. And it does this through recognizing and appreciating a person's effort. Again, it's not necessarily winning. And it provides a positive reinforcement to continue participating in these learning activities. However, a 4-H'er's experiences must be structured so as to incorporate opportunities to build both a positive self-esteem and self-reliance. So recognition must be continually revised over and over again to meet the needs of individual participants. And so this is, for example, where ages and stages of youth development come into play. We're going to look at this in our next training session within the New Agent series. But think about it. You're going to recognize a 4th grader a little bit different than you would a 12th grader. So if you look at this slide, the image that I have on this slide is of a good effort sticker. When I was in kindergarten, you always got a sticker for all the good things that you did, for something good that you did. If you colored within the lines, you got a sticker on your paper. If you wrote the alphabet, letters of the alphabet, reasonably legible, and something that doesn't look like that of a serial killer's handwriting, you got a sticker. You fall asleep during nap time, you got a sticker. You keep your hands to yourself, you got a sticker. I loved stickers. I would collect them and put them in this little book that I had. And my favorite stickers were puffy stickers and scratch and sniff stickers. If anybody remembers these, just kind of keep that to yourself. If you remember those and don't want to admit it, I don't blame you for that. But if you don't know what those are, I'm getting really, really old, and you can text me or email me after this presentation, and I'll tell you about puffy stickers and scratch and sniff stickers. However, if you fast forward to the time that I was a senior in high school, you can only imagine that puffy stickers really were not cutting the mustard anymore. So let me tangent for just a moment, because I want, while I'm here with you all, to have a brief discussion about recognition, because this is actually one of the elements that we are looking at in the office right now, and it's this recognition system. In particular, the use of ribbons and certificates. So if you all will unmute your mute buttons, let's talk for just a second. Are ribbons of value anymore? What do you think?
Yes and no. I mean, they like a lot of things.
Do you
I think especially for younger kids, they're important. Even
okay.
But I think older kids usually don't care.
Yeah.
Older kids what?
They usually don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the younger kids really value those ribbons because they haven't gotten as many. And then as the older kids have gotten so many, they appreciate the other prizes that we give out.
All right, so what about plaques? Plaques, trophies, hardware, that sort of thing.
Plaques? No. Plaques are not.
We give out plaques at our county banquet, but I just have been thinking about that the last year, that I don't know that that's a great use of our money anymore. I don't think kids use them like they used to.
No, they really don't. Trophies are one thing, but plaques are just kind of very outdated now.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to assume that certificates kind of fall in that same.
Yeah, because they're just going to throw them out.
I know I end up, for fall judging, everybody as a part of participation, which is what we're going to talk about next. As a part of participation, everybody gets a certificate for participating, whether your team wins or not. But I end up picking up more programs and certificates after the awards banquet is over than I swear the participants take home.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are some things that we're having conversations about, because we spend, a significant amount of money every year on plaques and certificates and ribbons, and a lot of stressful moments right up until the event to make sure that everybody has got a certificate, and the certificate has been signed by the specialist, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not for sure that it really means anything. And so we're looking at what are some different ways to reward.
Well, and I feel like before too, some of the kids that would have kept those kept them to put in their portfolios, and now that's not going to be necessary. You know what I'm saying?
Mary Beth is so nice now. She says, "Now, Laura, you've jacked all of that up, so they can't do that anymore." So.
Well, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, a lot of the kids that did find value in them, that was one thing they used it
That
for.
was the main value.
They didn't necessarily display it in their room, but they stuck it in their portfolio, and now they're not going to do that anymore. So I just don't see that they're as needed. I don't know what's a good replacement though.
Well, we don't either, and that's the whole deal. It's like, well, we don't mean to be. Well, this is the way that it's always been done, but honest to goodness, that's kind of how it's coming down. This is the way that it's always been done. And, our conversations with other states about how do you all do this, everybody's kind of in this same boat right now. There's nothing, there's no really innovative kind of idea that stands out. And I know that Jennifer Richards, who's working on the new curriculum, they're working on things called Digi Badges, which is kind of like the Girl Scout and Boy Scout badges, but instead of a physical badge that you touch, they get a digital badge, and they're working that where you can collect those as you go through the different project lessons. And so I don't know how that's going to go over. I'll be real curious to see that, but you know, I don't know that they're interested in, you know, things like gift cards and things like that. But you know, I mean, if you've got, you know, 150 kids participating in the public speaking contest, you can't go out and buy gift cards like that. So when we'll talk about, you know, different types of participation, but this is just very challenging for us. So I say all of this and ask these questions to say to you all, and I apologize for the tangent, but if you all have any brainiac ideas of, hey, why don't you think about this as a way of recognizing youth for participating in something, please pass this along because we're a little stumped right now.
Well, could you do like, I mean, we do participation points, and they get different prizes based on their participation throughout the year.
So it's accumulation.
Yeah, and so we have a whole system where there's different levels of prizes, and those prizes have a certain dollar amount range that we try to stay in, and they know, like, the top prize is a belt buckle, and so they know that if they get the max amount of participation points that they will get a belt buckle. And
I like that.
And then the prizes change every year. They still get well, we call them awards, but they still get the belt buckle as the top prize, but the other categories change. And you could do something like that and have like a awards website or something where they could cash in their participation points for different prizes.
I like that because I was getting ready to say I think that's challenging on the state level because I may only see some of these folks one time a year depending on what they're participating in. But if we all work together and made it something comprehensive like that where they get points on the state, regional, and county level,
right,
and we could work together to come up with some phenomenal prizes. I like that. I'm jotting that down. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and the kids it really does encourage them to participate.
Yeah, and the purpose of doing it here, we did it to help kids get outside their main project and do other things like join Honor Club or All Stars or do a portfolio, to not just do, you know, like the horse contest or just do the livestock contest, but to help them get outside of their normal activities and to get involved in the full 4-H program. So something like that at the state level for, you know, the whole state could help with participation across the board. If a kid can see, hey, if I do all these different activities, then I can get this, and we might get more participation in things.
But I think doing a website like that, because, I mean, like my dad's old company did that. Like they got certain amount of points for different things, and they could cash them in for things.
Okay.
So, I mean, that would be a cool idea. And then that way you could have 4-H stuff. Like you could have like a 4-H backpack, but you could also have like the highest prize being like an iPad or, you know, some of the gadgets that they really like.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to pass. We have staff meeting tomorrow. We'll be passing this information along. All right. Well, for the sake of time, let's roll ahead. We're going to get to share some more ideas and thoughts and suggestions as we continue to go through. But regardless of whatever the token is, the thing about it is that the individual progress, that's what we're looking for, and that is what has to be recognized. And so individual enthusiasm, much like we were talking about with the different types of awards, has to be encouraged. So there's really no one way of encouraging and supporting young people because just like all of us, they come from a variety of backgrounds. They have a number of different experiences that they bring to the table. They have a variety of interest. Their values differ, their needs differ, they differ in attitudes as well as aspirations. For some youth, and you all know this, intrinsic or what we call internal recognition is far more powerful than any extrinsic or external recognition. So to say all of this is that the model for recognition that we're looking at today has to provide a balanced approach. And however it is that you design or modify this model to create your recognition system, it too is going to have a balanced approach. It needs to include a variety of forms of recognition in order to meet the diverse needs and interests of today's youth. But recognition also needs to be used to motivate, foster self-appraisal skills, and to encourage these youth as they continue to attempt more difficult tasks, higher skill levels. And this is based upon the principle that recognition is just a basic human need that can be done in many forms, but needs to be structured in a way that builds positive self-esteem. Because ultimately, the goal for youth is to become a self-directed learner. So the recognition model is part of a comprehensive plan, and it rewards positive learning behaviors in youth, and it's based on those youth's involvement, participation, and or efforts. So at this point, if you will pull your clover with the 4 circles back out, and we're going to start with recognition for participation. We're going to start with the first circle. As we move from one part of the model to another, their experiences will continue to broaden, and there will be more opportunities for learning and for raising self-esteem through other types of recognition. And so the recognition model actually includes 5 types of recognition. Now, we only have 4 on our clover, and I'll explain why at the very, very end. But it's important for adults who work with 4-Hers to provide appropriate recognition for all participants. This first type of recognition is participation, what we've just had a little discussion about. This type of recognition program emphasizes the importance of simply acknowledging young people, who have been involved in a 4-H educational experience. Think about your own county program and your 4-H public speaking contest. For many, and I was the same way, simply surviving that contest was a major accomplishment. In addition, it was a first step in building a positive self-concept, but I didn't know about that at the time, and I did not care. I was scared to death. So let's look at some of the distinguishing characteristics for recognition for participation. The first one is that it's a simple requirement and it's well publicized. I'm not really sure that simple is maybe the best word to use, but let's just say that there's no surprise element. They know that it's coming. So if we think for a moment again about the 4-H public speaking contest, this is actually a perfect example. When I was in elementary school, everyone, and I do mean everyone, knew about the 4-H public speaking contest. I knew that when I started 4-H in the 4th grade, I would have to do a speech. I knew going into the 4th grade that my teacher, Mr. Weeks, required everyone in the class to do that speech. Even if we did nothing else in 4-H, we had to do the speech as part of our language arts grade. I did not have to do it to win. Winning was the furthest thing from my mind. I did not care. I just had to participate in order to meet the requirements of the class. So even though it wasn't formally publicized, word of mouth got around, and so it was a simple requirement. I had to do a speech for a grade, and I knew this before I ever even got to the 4th grade. Another characteristic for recognition for participation is that it can be earned many times. And all of this means is that you can recognize participation for absolutely anything, and you can do that over and over and over again. In other words, it's not recognition for a culminating activity. Think about the 4-H portfolio for a moment. How many of you all, and you'll have to turn your mute buttons back off again, how many of you all recognize 4-H members who have completed a portfolio on the county level?
We don't really do anything for that specifically.
Okay. Stacy, do you all do anything?
Well, you know, this is my first year,
Okay.
so there's a lot to answer about, but I don't really know that answer right now.
Hey, that's all right. That's okay. Well, the truth of the matter is that most counties do not. Some counties do recognize, whether you're in junior high or senior high, if you've completed a portfolio, and no matter where it went in the process, you know, you got recognized for doing that. But the main reason that I think a lot of times recognition for participation may not happen is that the portfolio is a culminating activity. It's not really designed for recognition for participation purposes. You think about it, you're working on a project, the portfolio, and it's going to take years for you to complete this and really build this up into something something big. And you only have 1 or 2 shots max at winning a state scholarship and a trip to National 4-H Congress. So you've got fewer and fewer people participating in it just because it's that large of a project. But it's more of a culminating activity, and we'll talk about the types of recognition that's kind of more appropriate for portfolios than recognition for participation. Another characteristic of recognition for participation is that it is presented at the activity. Ideally, presentation awards should be given at that event or activity in which youth participate. There's really no reason why they wouldn't be, as this type of recognition represents nothing and is solely dependent on nothing except for that participation. Unlike if we use the portfolio for an example, you know, you're going to get recognized maybe at 4-H Roundup for work that you've done all year long, but you're not necessarily recognized for every piece of individual work. Another characteristic of recognition for participation is that it's appropriate for the activity and the 4-H member. So participation recognition may vary in its type for the activity for which it's presented and for the 4-H member or members to whom it is presented. The most common type of recognition for participation, the award that is given out, is that participation ribbon. It's simple, it's easily attainable, it's small enough that you can store it in large quantity and it not take up 3 closets. It's most appropriate for 4-H activities and members because it's very similar to the honors or awards given for first, second, or third placings. And like you all were talking about in the very beginning, the younger 4-H members seem to appreciate those a little bit more than the older 4-H members because they don't have that many ribbons. And so, hey, I may not have gotten first, second, or third, but I got a ribbon, and that means something to them. A fifth characteristic is that it's not expensive and yet valued by the 4-H member. And so because you're going to need so many of these types of awards, we have to think about budget, maybe more so than any other factor. You've got to go for something that's not expensive, and yet at the same time, you have to think about those puffy stickers and those scratch and sniff stickers. Are they considered valuable? Are those ribbons considered valuable? And you've got to weigh in your youth, their ages, their interests, and all of those different factors when giving out different types of recognition, in particular participation recognition. And finally, the final characteristic of recognition for participation is that they enjoy both cooperation and competition. So giving something to acknowledge a 4-H'er for his or her participation does not have to solely relate to a contest. This type of recognition can be given out for both competition as well as cooperative activities, such as a service learning project. So let's stop for just a second and take a moment and come back together. If you will turn your mute buttons off, and let's share with each other on a couple of these questions. Excuse me. Can you think of a 4-H activity or event or competition in which recognition for participation would not be appropriate?
Um, well, I mean, I really don't know that giving them like a participation ribbon for coming to a community service event, like a project, would not be appropriate. I mean, I don't think they should get a ribbon for doing that.
Yeah, it's very subjective, and this goes back to the autonomy of every county. I personally think that they're over recognized. Do any of you all watch the show The Middle?
No.
No.
Okay. I love this show. I think it's hysterical, but I'm kind of weird anyway, so you can take that with a grain of salt. It's basically a family of 5, and the kids are growing up, and mom and dad are trying to hang on and pay bills and work and manage all of these strange stages of youth development in which these kids are in. And one year, in one episode, the middle's child, who she is tried out for absolutely every contest, every club, every event, everything, and she never gets into a club. Never. But she made the cross-country team. Excuse me. Because the cross-country team was no cut. So as long as you circled the track 5 times, you were on the cross-country team. And at the end of the first year, she came home all excited because they were going to have their end of the year banquet, and she was getting MVP. You know, and the parents are like, MVP is in most valuable player. And she's like, yes. Well, they could not figure this out because, you know, she's not that good. I mean, honestly, she finishes dead last in every race. So how is this even possible? Well, come to find out, she won MVP punctuality. And the coach was giving out, everybody on the team got an MVP award, but it was for something different. It wasn't necessarily for most valuable player. It was MVP cooperative spirit, or MVP most improved, or MVP something like that. And she got MVP punctuality, and they were all, you know, excited about that. Or she was all excited about that. Her parents on the other hand were like, you know, this is ridiculous that we maybe over recognize youth for things that are not necessarily deserving of an award, a tangible award, if you will. So what is your opinion on that? What do you all think about that? Do we over recognize youth?
I don't think that we do in our county program. We just give awards for, you know, the regular contest. And then we have an awards banquet once a year. And we recognize all the kids that have gone to a county contest or above by just giving them a certificate and maybe a pin for the project area they competed in the most. And then we give out some special high awards, but I mean, really, that's mostly all we do, and then, you know, the livestock and the horse projects have their participation awards, as Chelsea was saying earlier, but that's just to encourage them to participate overall.
Okay. Now, Stacy, I know you have not been with the program all that long, but what's your opinion? Do you think that youth are over-recognized?
I think to an extent, yes, because a lot of times they have to have the self-recognition and want to do it for how it's going to make them feel, instead of doing it just for that certificate or for a reason like that.
Kind of what we were talking about earlier with intrinsic versus extrinsic recognition.
Yes,
Okay.
I think it lasts longer that way, and it's something that benefits you in the long run throughout your life, because you can't always expect to get something in return for what you're doing.
Right. I mean, I would love to get a participation ribbon for paying my bills at the beginning of the month. That's big. That's big. I've worked hard to make that happen. All right, let's go on. I want y'all to stay with me. Don't cut your mute button just yet, because we're going to come back to some questions in just a second. But we're going to kind of stop the slide presentation at this point, and we're going to use the brand new first annual ever 4-H airplane paper airplane contest. and we're going to do this throughout the presentation to kind of help to identify these different levels of recognition or of the recognition model. So the 4-H paper airplane contest is like many other contests that we do in 4-H, for which we either do or we might recognize participants. So I want you to take a moment and identify some other contests in your counties besides the poster contest and besides the public speaking contest. What other contests do you have with your in-school clubs, for example, or your community clubs, where you identify people for participating?
We do the bread baking, and we do the piggy bank.
Okay. Chelsea?
Yes. I mean, in school we only do speech and demonstration, but we give ribbons to all of those kids.
Yeah, we don't really give participation ribbons per se. We give blue or red ribbons. And then if they come to the county contest, we give them, they get to choose their prize.
Okay.
Prizes instead of cash, but we also give out ribbons. But then we have like the poster and the photo contest and the piggy bank contest that we give through participation ribbons for to like community and project groups.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other times that you think, based on what you do in your respective counties, and now that we're kind of talking about a specific type of recognition, which is participation, can you think of any other activities or events that where participation for recognition for participation would be appropriate?
Other events that, well, I mean, like hippology, or judging events.
Okay. As we get towards the end of today's presentation, we're going to talk about why that participation acknowledgement is somewhat beneficial to us. It's kind of a sad story, but it is in the long term. Let's go on for the, because of time. If you'll go back to your black clover with the 4 white circles and the one that has recognition for progress towards self-set goals. Let's look at this. So, parents and other adults, agents, etc., need to help youth set those realistic self-set goals. Recognition for progress towards self-set goals, no matter how small that goal is, and it is an integral part of this type of recognition because it enables youth to gain experience in both goal setting and realistic self-assessment. Where am I? Where's my skill level in this? What do I need to learn? How do I need to improve? So the first characteristic of this is that it's for all ages and activities. You know, as adults, we are very accustomed to setting and progressing towards goals. As a matter of fact, most of us have just completed this activity in the last few weeks and months when we created our programs of work for 2017. But goal setting, again, it's not just an adult activity. It works for all ages. And I think out of 4-H, it's one of the best life skills that we teach. That's just my opinion. The second characteristic is that it's realistic and reachable. This, I think, is the biggest mistake that we make with 4-Hers in helping them to set personal goals. Excuse me. It seems that our goals evolve around winning something. I see these goals all the time when I look at and judge 4-H portfolios. They are going to be, I want to be elected president of my 4-H club. I want to be elected Speaker of the House. My goal is to win the Vet Science Project. My goal is to go to National 4-H Congress. Or I want to win Best of Show at Beef Expo. Now, do not get me wrong. I'm the biggest competitor in the history of the world, and I think winning is wonderful. But goals should be set in such a way that the outcome of the goal is dependent only on the person who sets the goal. Let me say that again, because I think I'm going to have t-shirts made up. Goals should be set in such a way that the outcome of the goal is dependent only on the person who sets the goal. So I can do everything in my power to win the title of State 4-H Council President. I can select a campaign manager. I can create posters and flyers. I can hand out candy and stickers until the cows come home at 4-H Roundup. I can shake hands with the entire delegation. I can practice and write amazing speeches. I can use social media, etc. Ultimately, however, whether or not I win the title of State Council President does not depend solely on me. It depends on how many people vote for me. And while I can certainly influence their decision, I cannot control it. So I hope that makes sense. And so this is why setting these types of I want to win goals is not realistic or reachable at all, because at some part and point it depends on someone else. Before I came on the phone today with you all, I had a conference call with the National 4-H Council Professional Development Work Group. And we were talking about goals for 2017. And so I was thinking about our presentation today as folks were talking about these goals. And I think that they did a good job. All of us are kind of on that same boat of, learning to say no and creating a better sense of time for oneself. And some of the ways that people were going to achieve that were very interesting. There was one lady, she has a nickname for herself, and every week she schedules a meeting with this person. It's herself that she's doing it with, but so that she can have the evening uninterrupted. And so if something comes up, not work related, but something personal comes up that she needs and wants to do, she can honestly say, oh, I'm sorry, I've got a meeting scheduled with so-and-so at that time. And she also does it because her secretary can see her calendar, and so she won't schedule anything on top of it. She thinks that's a standing meeting every week. So she's totally in control of that. It's not dependent on anything else. She's running the boat on that. I'm going to be interested to see how it goes, but I love that idea, and I will be stealing that. The third characteristic for recognition towards for progress towards self-set goals is that the 4-H'er uses his or her own goals and plans. So when your 4-H'er says to you, I want to win the county 4-H public speaking contest, it's your job to help him or her by thinking of what they want and need to learn while they are competing. What is it that they need to do or can do to improve their public speaking skills? And at the same time, it may help them maybe to win the public speaking contest. So let me use this example with you today. I want to introduce you to a young lady by the name of Lori Gallimore. Hello. And this young lady won THSDL, which is the Tennessee High School State Speech and Drama League State Original Oratory Championship in 1988, before most of you were born. She won a trip to Colorado Springs, Colorado to participate in the national contest, but she had a problem. She had worked through and had overcome a lot of speech challenges growing up. She was painfully shy. She had a slight speech impediment as a child that would rear its ugly head, and sometimes when she got nervous or she got really tired. And she was a horrible extemporaneous speaker, which is why she never made it to the state 4-H public speaking contest. And while she had worked through most of these challenges, she had one challenge that she had yet to overcome by the time she won THSDL, and that was her heavy West Tennessee Southern accent. This accent made words like and might and night difficult because they came out as like and might and might and night. And she also had a tendency to cut off the ends of her words. You know, where she's from, they do a lot of hunting and fishing. And she would say hunting and fishing instead of hunting and fishing. Her speech coach told her that she would never make it past the first round of competition at the national contest with this accent. So they had to come up with a plan and set a goal. And it just so happened that in Lori's small hometown was a woman by the name of Ruby Kreider. Miss Ruby, as she was affectionately known, had been a speech coach for decades. This adorable little lady at the ripe old age of 86 was still active and wore pink high-top Converse tennis shoes everywhere she went. She had been a dialect coach to some of television's most famous stars, including Shelley Long from Cheers and Cherry Jones from 24. She lived in Paris, and so as part of Lori's goals for 1988, she set a goal of improving her enunciation of words. Now note, I was not curing, nor was I fixing. I was simply going to improve on my enunciation of words. So Miss Ruby gave me some tips, and I stood in front of a mirror for most of the summer practicing. And if you notice, I do not say words like, night, or might. While I speak with a Southern accent, I lost the long I sound in 1988. And I am very cognizant of when I speak in public, especially in formal speaking, that I speak very clearly and that I'm careful to enunciate all of my words, including the ends of words. And so I went to Denver, and I made it to the second round, but that's all. And while I would have loved to have won, I got a very valuable life lesson from this experience: the proper enunciation of words. Now, maybe your 4-H'er has the same conundrum, and maybe he or she wants to learn how to better enunciate their words. So what plans can they develop to achieve this goal? Well, maybe they can set a goal to practice reading aloud an article from the newspaper. And by over-pronunciating each word in the reading as they repeat this action every day for a month. Maybe they record their sessions so that they can listen to see how that enunciation is improving. This is a very simple goal, and it's dependent on no one else but the 4-H'er. And yet, it's going to heavily influence whether or not that 4-H member achieves his or her goal. Miss Ruby gave me a few pointers, but it was solely up to me to practice and execute. And at the same time, this 4-H'er is learning and practicing how to put the ending on words and say the words clearly so that she or he can be understood. If she or he wins the public speaking contest, just consider it a bonus. What is important is that they've set a realistic and a reachable goal. They set it, and they were able to work independently to achieve it, and along the way develop a very useful life skill. The fourth characteristic of recognition for progress towards self-set goals is it is valued by both the 4-H'er and the adult. Goals can be very, very challenging, but they need to meet the needs and interests of both the 4-H'er and make sense to adults. It has to be something that the 4-H'er wants to do and wants to achieve, and it has to be something that an adult will be able to look at and say out loud, okay, these are worthwhile and meaningful goals. The fifth characteristic is that these are measured against goals. And what I mean by this is that the progress can easily be measured by the goal that was set. It's very black and white. Did you achieve the goal or not? If we go back and look at my goal of better enunciation, it just so happened that a recording had been made during the final round of the state THSDL competition, my state winning original oratory. performance. My speech coach in turn made another recording about halfway through my summer practices before the national contest, and it was blatantly obvious, very easy to see how much my speech had improved. Remember SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, results focused, and time bound. Using this tool will help you to help your 4-Hers set meaningful goals that will work. I think that one of the most important things to keep in mind is that for a goal to really be successful, it needs to be thought out on the front end. And I know that most of the 4-Hers who compete with portfolios sit down and write those goals about 2 seconds before they turn those portfolios in. They go back to see what they've achieved, and they write a goal that matches it. It's very obvious to the judges when that happens, as it's easy to see whether or not a 4-Her has made some sort of effort in growing towards achieving a goal in that portfolio structure. That's why we have things like looking back, thinking ahead, and those section A, B, and C forms. Believe it or not, those clearly indicate to people who are judging how well you've done towards moving towards a goal. If the goals are written correctly, there is some thought and purpose behind them, the evidence is right there, and you can easily see it from what has happened from the time a goal was set until the very end. And even on the end, it's not so much whether a goal was achieved or not. It was more about what was learned or gained in the process. So I want to take a second and give you all an opportunity to work on writing a goal. Think of yourself as a 4-Her and put yourself in this place. You're working on the first annual 4-H paper airplane contest once again. I want you to take a second. I'm going to stop the screen share, and go back. And if you would type in your chat box an example of a goal that you're going to go for with this 4-H paper airplane contest, how you're going to accomplish that goal, and the resources that you're going to need to achieve it. Okay. So once again, think about a goal that you're wanting to go for with the 4-H paper airplane contest. There's some examples on there, but there's other ones that you can choose. How you're going to go about accomplishing that goal, and the resources that are going to need to be acquired in order to achieve that goal. And as you put those together, if you would type those in the chat box, and let's look at those. All right, so Mary Beth says, I want to learn to fold my paper airplane so that it flies further. Your resources are going to be lots of paper for practicing, and you're going to need a long room. And how are you going to learn about folding? Because I think that's going to be your key to accomplishment. Okay, so Chelsea's wanting to go for a more compact design so that it can handle crashing much better. And her resources are going to be better folding and paper and using the help of others. So both of those are admirable and will certainly work. One of the things that, okay, Mary Beth is kind of hitting on it now. One of the things that you're missing is how are you going to accomplish that? You know, I want to learn how to fold my paper airplane. How are you going to do that? So you're going to have to do some sort of research. You're going to have to reach out to a paper airplane expert or a specialist here on the UT campus that you know, their specialty is paper airplanes because we have so many of those. Classes on how to fold an airplane, internet research, maybe even like an origami class. They teach all sorts of cool folds and things like that. Stacy wants to make a paper airplane. Oh, I love this. That will fly in the air for at least 2 feet. Hers is very specific. It's very measurable. Yep, right. She's only got to get it 2 feet. And she's going to have to find someone who's made paper airplanes that will know what will make it fly. So, Stacy, yours, I like that a lot. It's very, 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 very specific. And it's going to be easy for me to go in and easy for you also to see if you achieve that goal or not, because it's got to make it 2 feet. There it is. It's very, very specific. And this would be a real goal for me because I'm not good at making Me too. Me too. Me too. All right. So again, think about those SMART goals when you're working with your 4-Hers, getting them real detailed. And again, it's not about are they going to win the paper airplane contest or not? It is what are they learning? What skills are they learning to help them improve on their paper airplane? Not necessarily win it, but if they win it, hey, it's just a double bonus there. So let's go back to screen share. All right. So let's move on to our third bubble, and this is recognition for peer competition. This type of recognition is a little bit subjective in terms of concrete time and place. It subjectively identifies, the best team or the best individual. It's a very strong motivator for some youth, but it's very inappropriate for others, and especially for youngsters under the age of 8. So one of the characteristics of peer competition recognition is that it is high risk. Think about it. After all, the ego is what is at stake here. You think about a time that you lost a competition, especially when you were younger. You felt horrible. It was like your world had come to a tragic end. You felt like a big loser. You may have even been told that you were a loser. You might have even been embarrassed. The pressure of peers and what they think about you, this weighs very, very heavily during your youth development years. It can still weigh heavily as an adult, too. And so this is a risk that has got to be taken into consideration and acknowledged before engaging in peer competition. The second characteristic is you may be able to make the competition optional. There's some people in this world who are not at all competitors. They enjoy competition for the sake of competition and camaraderie and getting along and absolutely nothing more. They don't care if they win or lose. And then you've got folks who make everything into a competition. Each year at Christmas, my family plays cards and board games. We're not into videos. We're into the old-fashioned kind of stuff, and we're huge board game and card fanatics. And one of our favorite board games is Aggravation. I don't know if you all are familiar with it or not. It's a little bit like the game Trouble. if you remember that one. But the objective is to get your 4 marbles all the way around the board first and back home first. But as you move along, people can land on you and what we call kill you and send you back home. And so there is really nothing in this world that gives my sister Amy and I more pleasure than to kill each other off throughout this whole game, even if we're on the same team, because you can play that game in teams. And my brother-in-law cannot, for the life of him, grasp this concept. It is inconceivable to him that we would even think this way. I mean, why in the world would we kill each other off, especially when we're on the same team? And besides the fact, and even more importantly to him, we're sisters, so we really shouldn't treat each other that way. Well, our answer to this question is very simple. We kill each other off because we can. And as we've tried to explain it to him, we've been killing each other off for years with every game we've ever played. He hates competition. He just wants to have a friendly little game. But oh no, not Amy and I. We're going for blood. And there is much at stake, including bragging rights for the winner. We even have, I'm kind of embarrassed to tell people this, we even have photo frames in the game boxes so that the winner can frame their score sheet and put it back in the box, and we save it until the next time that we play. And then when we open the box, it's just like, ooh, remember last year when I kicked your rear end for doing that? It's that kind of moment for us. And the point to all of this is, besides the fact that I come from a very sick family, but if you have an opportunity to make that competition element of an activity or an event optional, then try to do that for those people who do not enjoy the competition like some of us do. The third characteristic of recognition for peer competition is that it can confuse the means and the ends, and this happens a lot. Once again, where we focus more on who won or who was elected than the skills and the knowledge that was learned. I had a phone call last week with a contact at an area hotel. I was making arrangements for the performing arts troupe. They've got a show coming up in a couple of weeks up in Kingsport, and then we've got to go to Lebanon for practice. And I've worked with this lady in Lebanon for years with 4-H. And once we got everything set up, I reminded her that the folks that I would be traveling with on this event were mostly high school age. And I always add this clarification, but this is the cream of the crop. These are the great kids. There'll be no behavior issues. And she said, she wholeheartedly agreed with me and complimented them on their behavior and their manners. And she also complimented the 4-H program. And she said, I know that they learned so much. Not only do they learn singing and dancing and how to perform, she said, but they learn how to travel, how to eat out in a restaurant and stay in a hotel and work with each other. And that's what's really important. My contact, Connie, nailed it. It's not just about stepping out on stage. It's not just about the spotlights and the applause. It's what's been learned along the way. It's what I call unintentional learning. Because what to do when they've got to figure out what to do when one of the troupe members is unable to attend. What do you do if you miss your cue? How do you room with people that are not your family and don't know all of your weird idiosyncrasies? What's proper dining etiquette? How do you check into a hotel? How do you use a map? All of these types of things are learned inadvertently through their experiences, their educational experiences with 4-H. The fourth recognition for peer competition is that it needs rules and procedures. Whereas recognition for participation is just that, rewarding presence and participation at an event, with peer competition, there has to be more guidelines. If you're going to declare a winner, everyone has to be working by and playing by and understanding the exact same rules in order to ensure fairness. Next, it may generate publicity. At the end of the World Series this year, you did not see or hear about or see many photos or hear about many of the teams that didn't make it to the second round of the playoffs, did you? Nope. It was photos of the Cubs winning the World Series over and over again. It is seriously doubtful that you are ever going to make a photo for your local newspaper of your county poster participants. The participants. To get the most bang for your buck, you want to recognize and show off the skills and talents of those who had the very best posters. Peer competition results in the recognition of the best of the best. And so publicity, whether it's a photo, a video, a news article, social media, is almost a guarantee now. And finally, the last characteristic of recognition for peer competition is that it is not for young children. And for all of the above reasons, and mostly because of the number one, there is so much risk to ego. This is why peer competition is highly discouraged for young children. So let's go back to our paper airplane contest. And there's nothing for you to do on this one, but I just wanted to show you that these are some examples of rules and procedures that might be included in such a contest. And I'll give you just a few seconds to read through those. And so this probably looks very familiar to you, whether it's public speaking or a demonstration or bread baking. We all have rules that have to go with those contests because those are peer competitions. They are going up against each other in those contests. But there is a different type of competition and a different type of recognition, and that's for achievement of standards. So standards of excellence are established by experts in a given area. By measuring personal progress against standards of excellence, youth are able to gain insight into their own efforts and their own abilities. Each year at the conclusion of Roundup, I am inundated with requests from agents for the portfolio and interview scores. And inevitably, after these are sent out, I will have one or two very wise agents say to me, I have the scores, but what do they mean? It's obvious that my 4-H'er needs to work harder in such and such section, but what specifically do they need to do? And as a result of this scenario that plays out every year, we've introduced a rubric to this year's portfolio. And the rubric was created by a number of specialists to set clearly defined and unchanging benchmarks. These benchmarks are designed to show minimum and maximum effort and personal growth towards learning both subject matter and gaining skill. The American system of judging, or what's called the peer system, includes a rank order scoring system whereby there is one first place, one second place, etc. Participants are judged based on standards and requirements, but they are also judged on how one participant fares against another. Many times in 4-H, we don't use the American system, but we use the Danish judging system, also known as the group method system. This is the use of blue, red, and white ribbons in which the determination of the color you receive has to do with how well you align to or how much you superseded the set benchmarks. It is not based on how one competitor does when put up against another competitor. Blue ribbons, for example, may be awarded to something which meets or exceeds all of the competition's judging criteria. multiple ribbons can be given each category. So there may be 5 blue ribbons and 2 red ribbons. And here's just a little interesting FYI. In Canada and Great Britain, blue ribbons are awarded to second place. It's red ribbons that are awarded to first. But regardless of which judging system is used, standards of excellence measure quality and not quantity. So let's look at this a little bit closer. And once again, we go back to our airplane contest. See how our ribbons would match up beautifully here? You get a blue ribbon if your airplane surpasses 30 feet. You get a red ribbon if it goes past 20 feet. And if it goes past 10 feet, you get a white ribbon. But I want you to look beyond that, because more importantly, these are examples of standards that might be set within a contest like a paper airplane contest. These are goals that are easy for all to understand. And when you're working with your younger 4-H members, a lofty goal would be to meet the minimum standard of surpassing 10 feet. Think back to Stacy. She wanted to go 2 feet with hers, okay? That was her goal. But as youth ages and learns more about airplanes and flight, etc., they're probably going to want to increase their goal, and rightfully so. So the next year, if a 4-H'er has surpassed the 10-foot mark in his first contest, he might go for 20 feet this next time. Stacy went for 2 feet when she set her goals, but if she surpasses her 2 feet and feels confident, next year she might go for 4 feet. You never know. But this shows judges and specialists that the 4-H'er is increasing his or her knowledge and skill in the subject matter area of paper airplanes. So this is how, when judging these, we're able to see if someone is making progress and learning the things that we feel like he or she should be learning at that particular age and stage of where they are. There is a 5th component of the recognition model, and this is not on your handout, but you can feel free to write it wherever you want to. The 5th component is the recognition for cooperation. This is not really a standard for Tennessee. I mean, we even talked about that at the very beginning when Mary Beth was talking about, I would not give out participation ribbons for someone who completed a service learning project. But it's important to understand that it's part of a national model and other states use it. Recognition for cooperation is about learning and working together, something that promotes high achievement. So cooperation may take advantage of all of the skills represented in the group, as well as that process by which the group approaches the learning task and goal. So in essence, what we're doing here is helping youth prepare for living in today's independent global society. And while we don't formally recognize this in Tennessee, it is important, nevertheless, to mention. So let's take a moment, ignore those, I forgot to take those off. Let's take a moment to review. And I want you to think back to the paper airplane contest that we've used all the way through this. And you can take your mics off mute at this point. The first question is, I want to know what you've learned in this. How did the airplane activity meet the participation component of the 4-H recognition model?
It had simple requirements.
They can participate many times.
There are prizes available, and they're valuable and appropriate.
Yeah, and it was appropriate activity for the age group.
And here's the deal. I mean, all they had to do was participate. They didn't have to do it in order to try to win if they didn't want to. In order to be recognized, all they had to do was participate. Unfortunately, what this kind of conflicts with what we do as agents and specialists, because we're needing to show quantity for our work. So getting participation numbers is really important to our reporting efforts and our promotions and our annual reviews. Unfortunately, that's not really the goal that we should be going for as we work with our 4-H members. And so from the adult perspective, this is once again an even more difficult balance in which to achieve, because we want to give out participation ribbons so that the kids want to participate the next time. And yet at the same time, we want to give out participation ribbons because we want those numbers to continue to grow. When you were writing your goals, what did you think was the most challenging about writing those?
I guess where they can be measured is kind of hard sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, it is. Some things that are tangible are much easier to measure than things that are not. I think about when putting together a resume, and I tell folks that I help with resumes all the time, you're going to have to put some numbers in there. You've got to show me those numbers or impact. You've got to show this. So sometimes writing those where it's something that can be measured against something else becomes very challenging. And so it's a little bit of a wordsmithing activity as well. How did you know that the paper airplane contest met the standards of excellence criteria?
Everything was pretty clearly defined as far as like how far it made it at least 10 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet. And it's not going to change.
Right. If it made it 9 feet and 11 inches, it wasn't 10 feet. So it's not going to get a white ribbon on that one. The standards are very defined as to what that cutoff is. Now, if you wanted to go for the 30-foot goal, but secretly, hey, if I go 50 feet, that's wonderful, and you go 50 feet, hey, that's fantastic. You're going to get a blue ribbon just so long as you go past 30 feet. Our last question is, how do you use the 4-H recognition model in your county program? Let me add to this. Besides the portfolio, what are some times that you help your 4-Hers set goals? When would you help them do that? When are some times that you have some real defined standards of excellence, some benchmarks? What kind of contest would you use that in?
Well, we help our kids set goals when each fall our main clubs, we interview officers instead of just electing them by popularity. And so we ask them to set goals in their interview, and we talk to them about their goals for that specific club they want to be an officer in and how they want to obtain that, to help us to guide those clubs, but also to help them, have some kind of goals set up front to lead the club in that direction.
That's cool. Okay, I like that. Okay. Well, I promised, or I may not have said this, but I always make this promise that I'm going to let you guys get out of here early. You're getting 2 hours of in-service credit for this training, but we're going to wrap it up in an hour and a half. Do you all have any, I'm going to stop screen share. Do you all have any questions? Hello. Do you all have any questions before we go about the recognition model, how it might work, a situation if you can use it, whatever?
I don't think so. I mean, everything's so explained. I mean, you did a great job just going through the step by step.
All right. Well, you all know how to reach out to me by email or phone call. I am actually home based until the middle of February. Yay! And so I'm going to be right here working on a lot of different projects, but happy to answer any questions you all. Give me a shout anytime that you've got a question about the recognition model. And if you haven't signed up for some other of the new agent training series, be sure to check out the website. We've got some more spaces available in those. They're all going to be on Zoom online and will be somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours in presentation. So hope you guys have a fantastic Monday, the rest of the day, and have a great week, and we will talk soon.
All right, thank you so much. That was
Thanks.
great. Thank you.
Okay.